Joining us now, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, Florida Congresswoman Paulina Luna. Thanks to both of you for coming on. Byron Donalds, I'll start with you. I don't know. We're just spending away. The Fed's pushing the brake down. The Biden spending is pushing the accelerator down. Inflation remains a very sticky problem. And on top of all that, you know, they're just pushing out how much, $7-8 billion of more student loan cancellations, even though the Supreme Court has told them you can't do it. You don't have the authority to do it. You know, Byron, this is some crazy government, if you ask me.
Larry, good to be with you. I would tell you that this is a rogue government. It's a radical government. You're right about student loan debt. The Supreme Court has told Joe Biden no. The Congress has not voted on anything like this for student loans, but he does it anyway. That is a violation of separation of powers. It's an impeachable offense. You have his massive spending, his overspending, which unfortunately a lot of our colleagues on Capitol Hill voted for to continue, but nobody asked the key question that you asked, Larry. What's happening in these Treasury auctions? How expensive is it for the United States to continue to borrow dollar after dollar when all we have to do is be responsible here on Capitol Hill? It's a recipe of disaster led by the master of disaster, Joe Biden. That's why we got to get rid of him. We need Donald Trump back.
You know, Anna, just thanks for coming back on the show. Look, Washington has to stop spending. I want to get your take on this. Byron is a financial expert, okay? I can hardly keep up with him. He knows about yield curves and Treasury bond issues and all the rest of it. He's right on target. But just generically, this country spends too much money. There are too many deficits. There is too much debt. Americans grow weary. It's now showing up at the polls. You've even got, bankers like Jamie Dimon, who's basically a Democrat, saying, hang on a second, all these deficits and debt are going to keep inflation as far as the eye can see. I mean, how do you break this cycle, Anna? That's really my question.
I think it's really up to the voters this November. As Byron had stated, a lot of people realize that under President Trump's economy that everything was more affordable, to include the grocery store. And so when you're seeing this administration pushing something like student loan forgiveness, I look at that like they're trying to buy votes. And furthermore, for people like myself who literally had to join the military and pay our way through college, I mean, it's a slap in the face for those of us that did it the responsible way. But I'll close by saying this. I think a lot of people now realize that regardless of what this administration says, they can't trust them. And that's exactly why you're seeing a massive influx of voters from the Hispanic and Black demographic in support of not just the Republican Party platform, but also President Trump.
It's interesting on that. You can't trust, the issue of trust. There's a new Harris poll out today, and a big majority of people say we are already in a recession. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but it was a 60 or 70%, honestly, say we're already in recession. Now, technically, we are not in a recession. But, Paulina Luna, I think it's a matter of broken confidence in Biden, which he cannot somehow marshal back. I think that's what they're really saying. I have no confidence in the future. Things are not fabulous now. It's too expensive to live in his economy, and I have no confidence that he's going to fix it. Is that possible? I mean, it's a confidence perception and a confidence breakdown, Anna.
Most certainly. In fact, most notably, you saw, I'm sure you may have heard of Cardi B, and she actually most recently said that she was not going to be re-endorsing President Biden because she frankly was disappointed in his performance. And then you're seeing other people in celebrity Hollywood come out and say that they're supporting President Trump because of that. So I couldn't agree more, and I'm sure that my colleague Byron has something to say on that.
Well, gee, I mean, if Cardi would speak to me, we could talk. I could perhaps teach her about supply-side economics. Anyway, Byron, I don't mean to digress.
Hey, listen, Larry, let me tell you, Cardi does know about supply side. You guys will have a good conversation on economics. But there's so many people, like Anna said, Amber Rose just came out the other day. She's supporting President Trump. You have a lot of people in hip hop. They're supporting President Trump because they understand that if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And people might be making money under Joe Biden, but they're spending far more. Everything is more expensive. It simply doesn't work. And that's before you even get to the other problems dealing with this administration. So that's why you're seeing so many out of the entertainment world lining up behind Donald Trump, because at that point in American history, the economy worked, things made sense. The media never made sense, but we're working on them the best that we can.
All right. Well, if she calls me, I'd be happy to talk to her, and we can have a little sit down with charts and graphs. But let me ask you a couple more things for you two. You're both terrific, and I appreciate you being on the show very much. Anna, let me go to this. Our own Bill Melugin, great reporter, reporting massive migration now along the California border coming up through San Diego. But here's the rub. The people coming across the border, Iranians, Pakistanis, Chinese, Turks, Indians, etc. That is kind of a new ballgame. We are getting so many foreigners, not from South America, not from Central America, not from Mexico, but they're coming from all over the world. And now the Middle East, all right? I think, first of all, that is going to become a big issue. There are terrorists in that group, and there are also criminals in that group. What do you think, Anna?
I think that it's actually the #1 topic for the election season. I think that this is a creation of the Biden-Harris administration's doing. I think that it's interesting that the media is still trying to portray these people coming here as Hispanic when they're simply not. And you are right, there are people who have been noted on the terrorist watch list that are being caught unvetted, unchecked, that are trying to come through our U.S.-Mexico border. So I would say that if you are an elected official, you actually care about your communities, you're going to say that we need to secure our border. And I would argue that until we can actually get it under control, that you could put a temporary pause in an effort to allow the immigration courts to catch up.
You know, one other thing on this, Byron, the state of Oklahoma is being sued by the Justice Department, by the Merrick Garland Justice Department, because Oklahoma is now criminalizing illegal immigrants. Imagine that. They're criminalizing them. Put them in the pokey for a couple of years if they come over illegally. Governor Stitt is very much a part of this, and the Garland Justice Department is opposed to it. It's somewhat like what happened in Texas, where they had to take their own steps and bring in the Texas Guard and the Texas Rangers and put up chicken wire or whatever, barbed wire. I mean, states are taking it into their own hands because the Bidens won't do anything about it.
Well, listen, what states are doing is absolutely correct. They have a responsibility to protect their citizens if the federal government is not doing their job. I mean, Larry, go back to the founding of this country. The states would have never ratified the Constitution if the federal government could just ignore the law. And that is what has happened in the United States today. Joe Biden ignores the law. Merrick Garland does nothing to keep Joe Biden accountable to the law. And actually what is happening is they are criminalizing other states that want to enforce the law. And by the way, they're also criminalizing their chief political rival in Donald Trump. It is an absurdity, which is why they must be defeated. Merrick Garland's got to go as well, because the job of the administration is to execute federal law, not go around it, not ignore it, and not create new law that never existed in the first place. That is why America is crumbling right before our eyes.
Anna, you want to bust Merrick Garland. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so basically we're going to be voting, I think when we return from break, on contempt of Congress. But, I don't really have faith in the justice system. So I did file inherent contempt of Congress resolution against Garland. I'm hoping to bring that to the floor, because what that allows is Congress to actually go ahead and use the sergeant at arms at the direction of the Speaker of the House and ultimately hold the Attorney General accountable, which is, mind you, the same thing that would happen to any other American. So I don't think that there should be a two-tier justice system. And I'm hoping that my resolution can restore justice and order in this country.
Well, it's a noble cause. I will say that. It's a very noble cause. Listen, thank you very much, Representatives Byron Donalds, Anna, Paulina, Luna. We appreciate it. Talk soon.
Thank you.